Welcome to the podcast that does more than just discuss. Embodying Spirit unpacks key metaphysical and psycho-spiritual theories through heartful discussion and playful debate, and then gives you applications and exercises to bring these concepts into your own life. Isabel Almeida, wellbeing coach, and Tara Love, healing arts facilitator and ceremony guide, have been on the conscious healing train for 40 years between them, studying a range of modalities from yoga and somatic healing to community engagement and philosophy. As best friends, co-creators, dynamic mothers, and dreamers of a better way to live, they have been seeking to live in conscious community for a long time. This is a collection of the conversations around consciousness, connection, and community they've been having for many years. The duo draw on a vast range of theories and schools of thought, claiming the sacred feminine space of relationality between many influences, from Hermeticism and Vedic scripture to quantum physics to shamanism and beyond. Also claiming their deeply intuitive inner knowing. They share these deep chats, ideas, and debates openly, bringing new embodied perspectives to ancient wisdom. Each episode begins with a discussion, leading into an immersive exercise and a guided meditation. They share these vital ideas and tools in practical and grounded ways to inspire waves of self-empowered awakening in the world at a time when we need it most. We really hope you enjoy. Greetings, beautiful souls. Welcome to our third episode, which is entitled Love versus Fear. Know Thyself and Embrace the Unknown. Isabel is now safely back in beautiful London town, freezing London town, and I am still basking in the sun of glorious Cape Town. So we are very excited about this episode. And where to begin? So I guess it's good to recap slightly. In our first episode, we spoke about everything being connected, about everything being spirit, about the oneness, and how spirit, universal consciousness, energy, creates other to know itself. In order to know itself more, it needs to separate from itself and find its way back to itself. And in this kind of separation and then reconnection to self, it gets to know itself more. And in doing this, it creates polarity. It creates otherness. It creates separation. And that's the separation that we often get lost in. And because we are incarnated in these individual forms, we start to associate with those forms. But really, we are part of this oneness and this universal consciousness. And therein lies the human condition. End of episode. That's the end of episode 1. And that, but these polarities that are created, we talked about being kind of false binaries, that really ideas of good and bad aren't opposites, aren't separate, but are all parts of one pole, as it were, if you see it as a stick almost, of goodness. You know, like where does one become the other? It doesn't really, it's all part of a spectrum, right? And I suppose, and the reason I'm saying this is because the primary polarity of the universe, we believe, and many believe, is that polarity between love and fear, and that in fact they're not separate, they're not other, but they are all part of this spectrum, of this one polarity of love, and and that spectrum, that polarity, is really the polarity of consciousness in a way, right? And I suppose at this point it's really important also for us to break down a little bit what love and fear mean, because I think love is such a broad term as well, right? And we have very fixed ideas of what it means, but it encompasses, like, in a way, our language really doesn't allow us to express all the possibilities of what love is. But in this context, when we're talking about love, we're talking about that wholeness. We're talking about that expansion. We're talking about that knowing, that completeness, sense of peace. It's jump in, please.
It's probably a good idea at this point to talk about the scale of consciousness. So if you've got like scale of consciousness is from like 0 to 1,000, right? So right at the bottom, you've got shame, guilt, grief, anger, like all of these up until about 200. I think 200 is courage. And then on the higher end, from 250, which is like neutrality, then from there, you've got more expansive states of being, like acceptance, reason, love, peace, bliss. I think enlightenment is actually from like 700 to 1,000. And so this scale basically says like when we're in sort of the lower end, in coming from the I perspective and our egos and our separateness in survival, we're working from those states of not having enough, and and then from the higher end, when we're in the awareness of ourselves being connected to all, then from there we're in seeing the world through a different point of view. Like we're seeing it as if everything is connected and working from there. But all of this scale is within us, right? So we can be at any point, we can be experiencing fear, we can be experiencing peace. That's all within us. Yeah, it's quite interesting.
I'm getting from that, like in terms of this pole, like I like the idea, we talk about polarity, like it being a pole almost, like this, with of love, of consciousness. We're kind of almost saying that love versus fear is the polarity of consciousness, right? And that these are kind of opposite ends or alternate ends of this pole, but that even within love, that's kind of what you're saying, right? That there is romantic love or love of other is kind of more towards the center of the pole, and as we expand our consciousness even more, we get into universal love, compassionate love, all the way up into a state of bliss love, which is kind of complete dissociation from the body and full assimilation with that state of oneness that we talk about in the first episode, right? Is that what?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think go on.
No, I was going to say, as this, and also if we look at that from like those lower ideas, from a survival mindset as well, and then moving into the higher ideas where like everything is working in alignment as well. So yeah, that just felt.
And for me, I guess the thing that comes up that is the most kind of like with so on the love side of the spectrum, we're looking at kind of like acceptance, we're looking at kind of connectedness, relating it back to our previous episodes as well. We're looking at knowing, right? And we're looking at also that sense of wholeness. We're looking at working towards that understanding of episode 1 of our wholeness, of our oneness, our knowing of everything being a part of us and us being a part of everything, right? And as we move towards the other end of the spectrum, we're going into otherness, something being outside of ourselves, something being unknown, something being and when something is outside of ourselves, we're able to hate it, right? Because a lot of people would say that hatred is actually the opposite to fear, right? If we're going to work with the polarity, but that is the opposite to love. And hate, we're only able to hate something when we see it as outside of ourselves, right? So then it goes also into separation. So really fear is when we other something, and when we other something, we see it as separate to ourselves. So the other end of that spectrum is the complete kind of not knowing of ourselves as whole, right? The not knowing that we are everything and that everything is part of us. So it's a kind of, the binary becomes, or the false binary, because it is a pole, and we're all always kind of oscillating or moving between different feelings of love and fear, right? We're always kind of moving up and down this spectrum in different moments in different parts of our lives, right? But in that kind of dance of consciousness, we're moving between love and fear, that is ultimately moving between a sense of wholeness and a sense of separation, right?
Yeah.
That's
Totally. Aloneness and all is oneness. It's that idea, isn't it?
I really like that. Aloneness and all is oneness. So anyway, back to the point. So so what that also makes me realize is that on that fear side of the spectrum, it's a not knowingness, right? In that sense of separation, in that sense of otherness, in that sense of things being outside of us, is a sense of not knowing, because you're not knowing that you are part of the whole, that you are, and therefore you are alone, and therefore there is hostility outside of you, and therefore you are in fear, right? And that's where that all comes from. And geez, like even saying it makes me feel small, and it makes me feel scared, and it makes me feel out of control, right? It makes me feel like tight. Like, and I think all those feelings, it's important, like we're going to talk more about feelings later, I think, but just, that kind of, that sense of fear, like when like you say, contracted, right, in the body, it's like, okay, that's that. And it's a not knowingness, right?
Yeah, totally. Living from the material as if you are the material only, which makes complete sense from a survival point of view, why you would then think in that way. And totally. And that's,
go on.
I was just going to say, and that's why it's so important to go beyond the physical and to know thyself from within, so that we can release that sense of smallness and alone.
And that's one of the, I mean, that's, we talked a bit obviously about the different hermetic principles, and that was one of the biggest tenets of the mystery schools, and of the the hermetic schools, which was know thyself. Know thyself was written, in stone. That was the thing, and I love it as a central kind of mantra for life, right? Like, know thyself. Is so important. I think it's so important to our understanding and our philosophy of what we're doing out here in finding our wholeness, right? Like, know thyself is coming into greater wholeness, coming into greater acceptance, moving into a greater state of love. I feel like and in that love and in that oneness, it's how we then release the fear. But I think what I wanted to say is that I wanted you to talk into maybe this idea, because what comes up for me is people going, but how is love wholeness? I'm still like, I feel like we need to just clarify that a little bit more, like, how are we using the term love here, like as wholeness?
Because I suppose when we're talking about love, we're talking about a sense of being completely relaxed with oneself and complete acceptance of oneself. In fact, love and acceptance are said to be a similar vibration in that way, because it's an okay. So when we think of love as in loving another, we're looking for them to reflect back to us love. So it's coming from outside in. But in this, where we're talking about love here, we're talking about this sense of inner ease and this sense of kind of blissful inner bliss that comes, and peace that comes from being at one with yourself.
Because I think that's exactly it, right? Like, people, when we think about love in the West anyway, and like I already mentioned, because we just have one freaking word, which is just really useless. I think people immediately go to the idea of loving something else, like this idea of it's something that you give to somebody, right? But what we're saying is that it's a state of being.
Even in the idea, like, I always think about words and, like, lovable, I want to be lovable. And if we look at that, we say, oh, love, able to love. It actually is something that's happening within us. And in fact, when we're in love, we're experiencing that love within us, even if it's for somebody else, although we may project it onto them. And so we're talking about feeling that love for ourselves without the need of anybody else. And then actually that's how we're able to better love others once we really have that love. Otherwise it's, you know, it's questionable.
Yeah, I guess that's our wiring as well. Like we've also talked about in previous episodes, that this idea of, you know, we're always looking to the outside as if, you know, reality is coming from outside of us, but that we're creating it. So it's about a state within ourselves, right? That love. It's not like, oh, I feel love because that person is beautiful, or that person is doing nice things for me, or that, you know, because of the way that person looks or behaves or whatever. Like it is about what's happening within us. Not that it's not connected to those things, but the state itself, that sense, that feeling of love is something that we are generating within ourselves, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And that feeling can be generated from many, many different things. And in fact can be self-generated. It doesn't have to be generated by any outside stimulus. And that's what we're tapping into, that sense of, like you said so beautifully, like relax and openness and ultimately connectedness, right? That's what it is. When we feel really in love with somebody, I feel like it's because we feel deeply connected to them as well, right? And we just feel like, yeah, a sense of openness and ease, and the boundaries and the barriers between us and the other break down, right? We start to finish each other's sentences. We start to think like them. We know what they want, like, you know, right? But that's just about and that sense of love can go not just for a person, but for a place, for an activity, and then ultimately can just come, because that's the point. We're coming into that understanding that it's something that we're creating inside of ourselves, right?
Yeah, and it's something that we are, like, we are love. Our essence is love, and that's why, like, we become aware that we, you know, when we're stressed, that we're not in that state of relaxed, because then, you know, we're moving, you know, at that point we're in a state of fear, right? So, but actually that state that we're seeking is actually what we are when we're just, yeah, like I say, when we're just relaxed. That's that. So it's not even something that, I mean, yes, something that we can generate, but it's also something that is just there, that is just our essence. And
because that's what we come from, as we were saying, like in the first episode, right? Like we are everything, we are wholeness, we come from that wholeness, and that wholeness is relaxed because it is the everything and the all. And it's when we allow ourselves to relax into that understanding of our wholeness that we feel that state that we call love. Right? And ultimately, as we were saying, bliss in its highest forms, because we can dissolve into that wholeness. But in order to do that, as we were saying, we have to know ourselves. Because otherwise there are all these parts of us that we don't know, and we feel that separation and we don't understand them, and we feel, and also, I mean, that's also where judgment of things come in as well, right? So it's about knowing thyself and releasing judgment of thyself that allows us to go into that relax of love, right?
Exactly. And then as well, through our lives, we can have the traumas or emotions that become stuck in us, you know, that we haven't fully embraced, and therefore they haven't been transformed into love. They've been, you know, stuck in a perspective that keeps us small. And through that awareness and through feeding into those fears, we can find greater love as well. So
right. So I mean, we are moving into sort of, where we're going with this. So in the ideal, like, or maybe not even in the ideal, but what we're talking about here is, I mean, just because it feels yummy, right? That idea of that feeling of love, like we want that, we want the love, you know? And within that, the question is, like, does that mean that fear is bad? Do you know what I mean? Like, does that, you know, are we just looking to be in a love state all the time? Is that what we, you know? And I think this is a really interesting question, because it's like, you know, why does this consciousness, why does this oneness, why did it create this fucking polarity where we've got fear? Like, why do we have that then, you know? And I think the kind of, I don't know if it's a paradox, but, you know, but interestingly, it's in order to know thyself, we need that polarity of the love and the fear to be able to have the contrast, right? Like we need the darkness to have the light. Does that make sense?
Exactly.
And in fact,
Yeah.
everything is spirit. The light and the dark is part of the consciousness. It's part of spirit. The scale is the consciousness scale. It's not saying, oh yes, all the love and that's consciousness, and all the fear and hatred and grief and guilt and that's not consciousness. No, it is consciousness. It's just different. It's a different vibration of consciousness. But we have to have both, right? We need that polarity.
Exactly.
We need that movement, because in order to have in order to grow, in order to know thyself more, we have to have the contrast, and we have to be able to see, it's like that beautiful thing, like if we don't have darkness, we can't see the light, right? Like we have to have one to have the other. And
no, I was saying, of course, we're constantly wanting to expand, like into more self-awareness. So it would make sense. It makes sense exactly what you're saying, that we have to have those moments of tension to have more relax.
Yes.
So
it's like cycles of, I think we might have even spoken about it, but it's like cycles of coherence and incoherence. In order to reach greater coherence, we have to experience incoherence. And hence we come into that whole creation of the polarities, why consciousness created separation in the first place, so that it could then come into greater wholeness, right? It's like in order to find greater wholeness, we have to have separation. In order to find greater coherence, we have to have incoherence. And in order to have growth, we have to have movement. We have to keep moving. We can't have stagnation. We're just jammed into love state constantly. We're just going to stagnate, and then stagnation is death, right? So we have to constantly be moving. Go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, in this world that we live in this dimension, that is obviously what we're experiencing, is, the need to uncover where there is smallness or fear, or, where we are unable to see love, to feel love.
We did promise we we're going to talk about dimensions, Isabel. So you just said the D word. No, go on.
I was just having the awareness that, of course, as human beings, this is our experience. And obviously there is, there are experiences where this love to fear to love dynamic may not exist.
Completely. Just to explain the joke to the listeners a little bit, like we were just like, there's many different understandings of dimensions. So we had this whole thing about dimension, and we're like, no, let's just not get into it, because so many different people have different ways of looking at it, and they kind of all correlate, but it's also probably a whole other episode. Maybe we'll do that episode, the dimension episode, I don't know, in season 5, because I think we've got a lot to get through before we get there. But I guess that understanding that this world, this universe that we're in, is a universe of knowing thyself, of getting to know ourselves. And in order to know ourselves, we need to work with these polarities. We need to work with this movement. So yes, we are going to have the love fear polarity as a way to grow. Like, I don't know, I love this idea that this universe is a playground where we've come to experience ourselves more as consciousness, and that there is a dimension, to use the word, which is, and dimension just means 2 measurements, right? So it just means a way of perceiving. So there is a way of perceiving the universe, another dimension in which we can be in full awareness. I mean, we kind of spoke about it in the first episode as well. We can be in the full awareness of the bliss consciousness state, that we are all one spirit. But in order to be there, we can't be incarnated in this physical form. So in the 3rd dimension that we are in, we can't have that full awareness, and therefore we need the polarity in order to grow. And that's also the beauty of having the physical experience as well, that we've agreed to have, right? So getting back on point, so we're saying fear is not a bad thing. Fear is not a bad thing because fear is part of love. Like we say, it's part of this polarity that's a false binary. Like, we need the fear to have the love in this dimension, in this consciousness. And also, like, let's take it back down to a really freaking basic level as well. Like, we need fear, like from a very 3D perspective, we needed fear for our survival, right? We still need fear for our survival.
Yeah.
Like, in a 3D situation, we need to know when something could kill us. Fear has been our best friend for many years of our evolution as well, right? Like, that's deep ancestral wisdom that we're carrying, big animal running towards me, fear, need to run, right?
Mm,
It's the sympathetic nervous system, it's the fight or
exactly.
flight. It's the reptilian brain that's like, you need to move, bitch. Like, do you know what I mean? It's that. Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, fear obviously has a place, but as we were saying, it's when you get stuck in that fear, when your nervous system is going off, but there is no lion in the room, and you're not under attack, and that's when it can become a problem, and then start to create disease, right?
So it's almost like we're still hung up in those. I mean, and we still do need a certain physical survival mechanism happening, but we're just not as much in need of it anymore as our ancestors were, because we're not, on the savannas with massive predators around us, threatening our lives anymore. In fact, we've got it pretty comfy in terms of the physical survival. Relatively, even though there are still people struggling for physical survival, but it's even that is in a different kind of I don't know, area of physical survival. Most of us, luckily, are doing pretty well in that way. And so it becomes much more psychological. And then that's where it becomes tricky, because it's much harder to go into homeostasis again, because the whole thing is like, okay, animal running towards me, fear. And then animal not running towards me anymore because I found somewhere to hide, or I played dead. Now, I can come back into homeostasis. And I can shake all that fear out of my body like animals do, which is where we'll talk about TRE later maybe in terms of a practice that we can use. But like now I can come back into greater coherence from my incoherence, and I've learned something, and that's that kind of pattern, right? But nowadays we can get stuck in fear. We can get stuck in a freeze state. We can get stuck in a fear state for various reasons. One being, like we just said, mind-based, that there's no actual animal, but it's psychological. Yeah.
I was just remembering when I was in South Africa with you, and that, like, with the mountain, and how I was like on the mountain, and suddenly I'm in like frozen in fear, and in that moment I just don't want to be there. I just want to be on the ground.
Context: Isabel has really bad vertigo. She conquered her fears,
right? And in that moment I'm like this fear doesn't, like, obviously I reject the fear, but there's a sense of, I've got to work through this. I need to, this is obviously something that's coming up. It's in my body. This fear is in my body. This fear isn't just in this moment being on this mountain. Actually, I'm actually understanding that this is like deeper, deeply like hidden, I was going to say, because obviously I'm not seeing it all the time necessarily, but in this moment it's just like staring at me in the face. And actually going on that journey, and then, like, finding myself in a situation where I'm having to conquer this fear deliberately, thanks Tara.
Pleasure.
I just grew exponentially. So it's like, when we're talking about this idea but actually having lived through that moment quite recently, and rejecting the experience, and then overcoming it, and then what that does for you, and the newfound love that brings, it's like, of course, it's just so expansive. So of course, like, I can see why, fear is just pointing towards more expansion. And how necessary it is. Like, it actually feels so good to be able to
alive,
like really,
I guess. It's so interesting because we want to control things so much in this world nowadays, right? Like, we're always wanting to control, and then so I can't be in fear. I don't want to be in fear, so I'm going to control everything so I don't have to face fear. But actually, that's where that stagnation we were talking about comes from, right? Because then you're not actually experiencing those emotions, but really allowing yourself to go into the fear can then allow you to bounce back higher. I mean, they say as high as you go is as low as you go, right? That's another hermetic principle. As above, so below. As within, so without. As high as you go is as low as you go, right? So it's like, in order to have greater states of love, we have to allow ourselves to surrender to greater states of fear. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, and it's that thing that comfortable isn't comfortable as well. Like comfortable doesn't equal love. Like, you know, this idea is that actually in that moment being so uncomfortable actually was the thing that propelled me to greater love, right? Like, so it's not, so I think that that's also a thing, is that we can become comfortable and we can think that we're being loving to ourselves, or, you know, because we don't do that thing that puts us on the edge, because no, that, you know, it doesn't feel comfortable, it doesn't feel safe, it doesn't feel.
That's such a good point. Yeah, love isn't comfort. Love isn't, sometimes love is going out for that run, or, you know, taking yourself into uncomfortable situations so that you can grow. Yeah. I want to pick up on that example, because I think it's a really good example as well to continue to talk about being stuck in fear, because you were talking about being on the mountain, and you were saying you know, that you realized that it was like that fear was actually embedded in you, right? So talking about us being stuck in fear, because it's so easy for us to get stuck in fear, and I think we really have to forgive ourselves this. And, you know, one of it is that, you know, it can be a mind-based thing, so it's not a physical thing, and that then that mind stuff can get held in the body, right? Because also the body doesn't understand time. So when it's mind-based, if it's an idea, that idea can still stay there even when you're not thinking that idea anymore. It's still being held in the body. So then that fear gets held in the body, right, the whole time. So even though the threat, the immediate threat might have disappeared, you can still hold it there, right? So that's one thing. And a lot of that comes from our trauma patterns from childhood. Again, as we were talking about in the last episode, around how we create our reality, but before we create it, our reality creates us, right? Or the world creates us. So those childhood trauma patterns that we have, where we might have been in environments of fear, then get stuck in our body. Yeah.
Exactly.
So do you want to talk about that for yourself? Because yeah.
Well, having having grown up in a situation with growing up with my father, who was an alcoholic, and often finding myself in situations where I'm having to small myself to feel safe. You know, obviously there's somebody, they're angry, they're drunk, you know, they're volatile, and you know, you just in that moment unable to process in any which way that, you know, that empowers you, because you're obviously having to, well, I was having to feel, I suppose it made me feel but scared. That's, you know, like that, you know, that in that moment it's like everything's, you know, thoughts are running, everything's running, and it's like, yeah, you just
Survival.
it's like just wanting, just feeling unsafe. And that then becomes a need to feel safe. Actually, you don't realize that you then carry that need to feel safe. Like, you know, so there is a lion in the room that's there, and you're always thinking about life through the idea of there being a lion in the room, even though there's not now a lion in the room. So in that moment when I'm on the mountain, it made me realize that actually, I've gotten used to being put myself in situations where I can feel 100% grounded. That's my idea anyway, whether it looks like that or not. That would be my idea. It would be like, you know, I need to feel completely safe because I'm feeling unsafe. And actually, I hadn't really realized just how much that was my reality until that moment when I thought, you're right, it's actually you are not feeling secure in your body. Like, you know, because the mountain's not moving, right? So if you're up there and you're standing on your own 2 feet, and you could be doing that on the floor and you would feel fine on the floor. Well, up here, you're actually just unable to feel secure. And I know that like vertigo is a real thing, and it's not to undermine anybody or anyone else's experience, but I understood in me that this was a psychological issue that had more to do with just, you know, the way that I was processing myself, rather than, not like, I believed that there was a me that could be on that mountain and feel secure, but I just hadn't processed that because I'd been processing from fear. I don't know, am I making myself clear?
And I think, you know, it's important not to undermine yourself in saying like it's a real thing. It is a real thing, but we really genuinely believe and have had revealed more and more, like in the last episode, that we are creating our reality with our minds. So all of these experiences are what's creating our reality, right? To the point that it can cause different chemical balances in the brain, right? Like, but that is where these patterns of behavior and these neuroses and these phobias and these deep psychological patterns come from these early trauma experiences that creates very strong wiring in the brain that creates neural pathways that we are then used to follow. And I always get the image of a record, like an old school record playing with these grooves, when I think about neural pathways, and that our wiring, our brains is just going on these established grooves constantly round and round and round, and that it's like they're so entrenched, it's so difficult to rewire. I mean, not to say that it's impossible, and I know we're all about rewiring and finding ways, and that's what this podcast is largely about as well. But it's like those are patterns that were created when our brains were so young and malleable, right? And that then we get used to seeing the world through those ways. So it's easy to get stuck in fear when you've lived in a space of fear. And I mean, your childhood experience was quite extreme. Of course, there's always more extreme, but it was pretty extreme. But it doesn't have to be such an extreme experience that will lead to you having survival fear-based patterns in your neural pathways, your neural programming as well, right? Like in my example, for example, just having been brought up by a single mum who had to go back to train for work, where there wasn't a lot of space and time for me, and there weren't other children around, and it was a bit inconvenient and a bit difficult, and she had a lot of shame that she was holding around that pregnancy and me, and so me just feeling like there wasn't necessarily space for me, and having a quite a strict grandmother, imposing her views, and so constantly feeling like I had to get it right, and I had to do my best, and that there was a right and a wrong, and that there was a judgment about my behavior, and I had to do better. And even just having that kind of environment meant that I was also always looking to see how I could do my best, and where the risk was, and where, if I didn't do that I was going to be reprimanded or punished, or do you know what I mean? And even that in itself can lead to a more kind of fear-based response to things, right? Like, because it's like, oh shit, I need to know exactly what everyone's thinking in the room to make sure that I get it right, so I don't get into trouble, or I don't take up too much space, or because otherwise someone's going to lose their temper, or I'm going to be told off, or whatever, and I think most of us have had some kind of childhood trauma experience in that way, remembering that trauma isn't what happens, but your experience of what happens, because most of us weren't just loved wholly for all of our full expression. And so most of us learned, again, I'm on the Gabon Mate train, look him up if you haven't listened, he's flipping amazing. But most of us have had to adapt our behavior to what we recognize as the behavior that will get us love, because we need love for our survival from our parents, right? And most of our parents were in some state of fear or survival themselves, and so they weren't able to love us fully in our wholeness, in our expression, and so we learned to adapt. And that's a kind of fear space, right, in some way or another, along that spectrum, and then there's the collective consciousness fear trauma patterns that exist, right, from various oppressions. I mean, obviously, if you're born into a family of color, like, there's huge ancestral trauma patterns there that hold huge fear responses. But most people have come from an ancestry of displacement somewhere along the way as well. Most people have come from an ancestry where I think actually everybody, and to varying degrees and in varying amounts, closeness, historically. Like there's been more trauma with more peoples more recently, but I think everybody alive on this planet today, somewhere in their ancestral history, has there will be a story of displacement, of oppression, and of inherited fear patterns, right? And like we were saying, even if we take it back to our our collective indigenous roots, there was the ancestral negativity bias of it was really important that you didn't fucking die. So we are wired to also listen to the fear wiring, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? It's like it was more important to listen to that voice that was like, okay, or that pattern, or use that pattern of behavior was like, well, if there's an animal running towards me, let me rather think it might fucking eat me than it's not going to eat me, maybe. So because I don't want to die, because that's going to also impact the tribe, right? So we're more likely, it's easier for us to follow those fear neural wirings, right?
Yeah, that
making
makes
sense.
sense.
Good. Okay, good. Plus, so these are all reasons. So basically, we're just like, these are all reasons as to why it's really usual and really common and really important for us to forgive ourselves for being stuck in a fear state. Because I think if you ask most people today, they'll say that they're probably more in those fear states than they are in those love states, right? I'm guessing.
Yeah, and this is why we speak about knowing thyself as well, because otherwise you just this pattern just continues on, and you then repeat from your your parents or from your childhood situations,
right? Because it's held in our bodies from our personal experiences, but it's also held in our bodies from our ancestral experiences. All of this fear, Go on, sorry.
Yeah, and that's why genetically people have this often they have the same diseases as well. They get carried on as well because the things don't change, from one generation to another. And especially previously, maybe where we were more in survival, just generally, whereas now that we're moving, we seem to have more space now in our lives to be able to become to know ourselves, right? Like and so with that we can really look at these things head on, and actually where we have these like I say with me in that moment, maybe previously there wouldn't have been the room for me to explore that, and I would have just gone and hid and then moved on to something else. But now we've got the time to say, oh, actually this is happening, and how do I overcome this? What would it take for me to move out of this state and into a new state? And then that moves. Like now I'm not the same person. I literally don't have the same level of fear in me around being off the ground as I did in that moment. Now it's not to say that there's no fear and that I'm now going to go climb the highest mountain and be on the edge and I'm not saying
sure.
but well, as long as I stay away from you, I won't be doing that. So that's but the point is now I'm already more grounded from within. I can already feel that, and that's the same with everything. Wherever there's fear, like where it can be about anything, right? But that's why we must bring our attention to that and actually start to know what is going on here, rather than just accepting that as, oh, well, I'm contracted here and that means I shouldn't do it, or that's not for me. Do you know, it's actually like, oh, okay, well, what's going on here? What's going on in my body? And for me, one of the things that I noted in that moment, and I work with breath work, but of course, when you're in fight or flight or freeze, you literally are not breathing in that moment. Like everything's just contracted, right? So for me, it was just like really understanding that actually, oh, okay, yeah, so I need to breathe when I'm on the mountain more. But actually, I just need to breathe more. Essentially, like what that was, what that reflected back at me. And so then, I just need to be more full of spirit, of myself, and more grounded, and so that's what came from that as well was this, just this awareness around my breathing. That, and as I say, it's not that I wasn't there on it before, but it just took it to another level. That is definitely one of these ways of coming back to ourselves in that moment and moving out of fear and more into love, literally, just by breathing deeper.
What you're speaking to there, I think, which is another reason why we can get stuck in fear, is because we think of it all as outside of ourselves and not within ourselves, right? It's another reason why we are, stuck in fear collectively as a species, because we're still being guided through education and things to think of things outside of ourselves rather than within. And not just that, but that we're being fed fear constantly through news outlets and social media as well, because when we're in fear, we are kept small. We think that we, as we talked about before, like, oh gosh, all this scary stuff out there that's going to hurt us and that we're not possibly able to control, right? But once we realize that we have the power within ourselves to choose love, to create our reality based on how we observe things, to do the healing as well, to be able to work with that fear state that's stuck in the body, and to be able to release that fear that is held somatically within us, then we can expand into a state of love. And that brings us greater freedom and greater wholeness. And that's why there are certain parts of society that don't necessarily want us to have that freedom, because then, well, it's just incredibly powerful to have that freedom, in that expanded sense of love and wholeness, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's so important that we understand that fear is something that, it's there, and it's there for us to use for our benefit. So it's also about forgiving ourselves for the fear that we have, so that we can really just expand more.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, what we are kind of co-creating a world of fear by recreating these personal trauma patterns and collective trauma patterns. Like we were saying, creating, because mind creates matter, and we've kind of spiraled. We've become this spiral of recreating fear, right? And now I feel like you were saying as well that we're at this point where we're able to put a bit more space, a bit more comfort, like collectively on the whole, acknowledging that not everyone has, but just in general, we've evolved to a space of a little bit more comfort, a little bit more space, a little bit more awareness, to be able to understand that we can actually co-create a world that is more geared towards love. Even though we accept that we need that fear as well, we need to be able to play the polarities, but one where we can shift up into greater fear, into a higher vibration, right? And I think people resist it. People resist it a bit, totally, because they're like, oh, it's all in my power. Oh, that's a bit scary. I quite like the narrative where there are these dark forces outside of myself that are scary and that are out of my control, and I don't have to take responsibility, right? There's a bit of an element of that as well.
Well, it's also the fact that when you're in fear, the way that you process doesn't, it's not from a perspective of oneness, right? So actually you're also stuck in a point of view that they are there keeping you small as well. Like, do you mean? So it's like, it's not even that they like it. It's like, oh, they like thinking that. It's just that they're in that mode of thinking.
It's not conscious.
And so that's why you have to exactly. That's why you have to then expand into, you have to find those relaxed moments to have greater thoughts of coherence, right? Like, and realize that they're there, that there are these moments that you can move out of these, like, often when we're relaxed, we then tend to entertain ourselves rather than when we're relaxed, using that moment to actually rewire ourselves.
But I guess, like, when you say we're really relaxed, then, like, I feel like when we entertain ourselves, it's because we're trying to also, I mean, not that entertainment's always bad, don't get me wrong, but like often it's a form of escapism, right? Like what we're talking about when we talk about entertainment, like if we're, watching things, or, that aren't necessarily expanding our minds, but just, or we're having a spliff, or we're, like having a drink, or we're talking about other people, or, doing these kinds of things. Often it's a way of escaping ourselves. And I think that we escape ourselves because we don't necessarily like the feelings that are within us. And I think that that's because those feelings that we're feeling within ourselves somatically in the body, which I think is important for us to talk about, are those feelings of fear, because of what we were saying. All of our body is still holding so many of these survival feelings, of these fear emotions, of these fear sensations, right? Of these lower vibrations. And that it's like, okay, now we're at this point of realizing, it's in our power to shift from fear to love, from surviving to thriving, but we're still holding so much of this trauma in our bodies, and that doesn't feel so good, right? So it's like, how can we release that? Like you're saying, that's why we need to forgive ourselves for holding this fear, and why we need to allow ourselves to maybe sit in that discomfort, right, when it comes up, and to find ways to let go of that fear, which is where all these somatic modalities come in that we talk about, and that we're finding ourselves, right? And that we found, because the truth is that we've had this conversation, we've been talking about this kind of stuff. It's just about releasing fear and choosing love, and we've been philosophizing about this for many, many years, but it's maybe only in the last 5 years that we've realized, shit, we can't just keep talking about it, because it's not shifting, right? We're still finding these trauma patterns are reappearing again and again and again, because we're understanding now, it's held in our bodies, it's held within us, and we need to somehow somatically release that. We can't think our ways out of this trauma, of the fear, right?
Yeah, that's right. And when I said, like going back to that point about being relaxed, and then the entertainment, I suppose it's maybe relaxed is on words, but it was like getting to that point where there's space for you to, because obviously often we're working, right? Often we're in action, we're like trying to get somewhere, trying to do something, and so in the minute then we sit down, then we go for entertainment. So we're like, now feed me something because I don't have to do something. And you're right, it is because we're not relaxed, but it is also which obviously just ties in with what you're saying, which is also, it is that point. Whereas if we just carry on recreating the same patterns by just like, just remaining as we are, and then, having something fed into us, we stop in that moment and realize that this is a moment that we can really come to know ourselves in. Moments, breath work, meditation, ways that we can then go further inside and actually explore what that is in a safe manner as well, because of course the fear is there because it's unknown, right? Like actually once we go through those moments, then we can start to get in connection with greater awareness, which brings greater love. I mean, it's all part of the process. Does that make sense? That's right.
Yeah. I mean, actually, I really, I think we're really onto something here. I really think that kind of what we're getting to is that idea also that love is like you said, it's acceptance, and that acceptance is also presence. Is being really present with what is coming up here and now. Is being able to sit with the feelings. Is being able to, because in sitting with them and accepting them, we're also then able to release them, right? And we're able to assimilate them into our wholeness, to allow them to be part of the wholeness. If love is about wholeness, is about expansion, it's about acceptance, then it's just about being able to sit with those things rather than running away from them. It's almost like fear is being in the thoughts, and in the past and in the present. What did I do wrong? What was going on? Or also what's going to happen? How am I going to deal with this? How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to win the race? How am I going to get the job? How am I going to get the girl? How am I going to, or looking back at the past, at everything that went wrong, or everything you could have done differently, or everything, that's the fear space, right? Being stuck in the space time as well. But that love is being present right here, right now, Love is being in the senses, in the feelings. And even if those feelings don't necessarily feel so nice, but being in the acceptance of those feelings and being in the exploration of those feelings and being able to really, and like you say, there's so many modalities then that we have to help us with that, because it can be really hard as well, because those feelings can be really difficult as well because of all the fear that's held in the body, right? So there's meditation, there's breath work, and then there's also, there's things like trauma release exercises, TRE, where we allow our body to actually release that fear through allowing it to vibrate, to let go, to shake, as animals do in nature, to shake out that trauma that's held there, right? As we feel it, as we allow ourselves to really feel it and express it. Or conscious dance, where we can dance it out, or voice work where we can sound it out, all these different beautiful modalities.
Yeah, it's funny because when you were talking about, like, I remember when I was younger, and so after my dad died, there was like years later where my body would literally still shake, right? Like, and it would do it, like, it just go in, it would just go into that state. And at the time I had no understanding. Obviously there was no, trauma wasn't a word that was being used, and there was no therapy or nothing, right? So it was literally like, it was so fearful. It was like I was scared of my body, because my body's, shaking, and I just can't understand why. And I'm just and I'm judging it, and I'm in complete unacceptance, and I'm trying to stop it in that moment, like control the body, and then everything will be okay. Yeah. And it's like, now I look at it and I understand. I'm like, oh my God, your body was just trying to save you. It was just trying to help you move into love. It was literally trying to shake the fear out of your body, but you never had the understanding. And so then years later, I found myself, like, obviously, remember, I'm not having this awareness at all at the time, right? And then years later, I'm in a situation where I'm helping somebody out, and there's a confrontation that's come about, and my body's gone into that same, it's started to shake again, and it's having a reaction to this moment. Obviously, it's feeling fear. It's like, it's remembering that actually this moment of contention could lead to something. And obviously it wasn't in line with what was happening, right? I'm in the office having a conversation, and it's not really that serious as well, because it's not even my issue that I'm talking about. So you'd think I'm not even that attached to it. But because there's this confrontation, my body's once again gone into this shaking. And I remember observing it at the time and immediately starting to breathe deeper and, bring it into balance.
But also what's so beautiful is that you would have thought at the time that shaking isn't a positive thing, right? You think, oh, it's the fear.
Exactly.
And obviously it's not ideal to, in a meeting in an office, start shaking. But at the same time, it's not just even that it is a trauma, it's a trauma pattern showing itself, but it's also releasing. The body's so intelligent, right? That what it's actually doing is allowing you to release that trauma there.
Exactly.
And obviously it's now releasing past trauma as well. And it's actually using this fear experience in the present as a trigger to help you release held trauma in the body from your past, which is flipping amazing.
Which is beautiful. And that's the thing. And then, so in that moment, having like been able to reflect on that moment, actually I was like, because at the time, I mean, even then I was thinking like, oh gosh, like, what's going on here? But that's exactly that. Now I realize that actually that was a really positive thing that was happening. In that moment, there wasn't a me that had to try and stop and control and small myself, which is obviously the first thought you have it's like, no, I need to become palatable. I need to be calm. I need to be seen to be this, because you're looking at things from the outside in. And rather than seeing it that like, oh, okay, that this is what's happening and I can relax into this and allow this to go by. Actually, something good is happening in this moment. My body is really working for me. And I think that comes up a lot as well. Like, with fear is that, I suppose because we've got this relationship with it, that it's bad, we don't see how it's working for us and how it's, in the moment, whether it's our body or whether it's something that we're reacting to, showing us that there's a better way of seeing this, that we're seeing it from a smaller perspective than we could in fact see it from a different perspective, which would allow us to see where we want to expand into rather than contract. So yeah,
it's all just
so
part of knowing ourselves, right? It's all just part of know thyself, know thyself, know thyself with spirit, know thyself, but also know thyself in thy fear.
No, but
All
it's
of that.
true.
Yeah. So that you can so that you can know your contraction to be able to expand. So you can take it there. And that's why it's so flipping exciting, all these different modalities, all the somatic modalities that we're rediscovering. I say rediscovering because so many of them are indigenous modalities that we've lost touch with, through the many dark ages that we've been living. That allow us to really connect with our body. I mean, our voice is another example. Obviously, I do a lot of voice work, and through which is another kind of vibration, another kind of shaking, right? And allowing our voice to express can send vibrations through the body that allow us to release that fear as well. When we feel, I mean, they've proven that if you hurt yourself, like on a very literal level, if you kick a table and your foot is sore, if you hum into your foot, if you send that vibration in there, it heals it. It makes it feel better. It starts to release it, right? So it's like allowing ourselves to really feel ourselves, to really know ourselves, to really be present in the senses of ourselves, and then using our body and all these beautiful modalities to continue to be in the deepening of the knowing of ourself allows us to work with that fear, to grow more, to know ourselves more, and to grow into greater love space as well.
Exactly, 100%. And even like with the sound baths you do as well, like, it's like having that vibration work through our bodies and actually release automatically. Is like, we just literally just have to just give ourselves to the experience, and that, and then blockages are released as well. It's not even that we're having to necessarily be the doers in that.
Yeah, and that's important as well, because often things like breath work and meditation, which, it's great to empower ourselves in these individual practices, right? But it's like we often need help, and that's okay because we are communal beings, right? So yeah, sound healing, also with TRE, trauma release exercises, they advise that you have a practitioner help you, lead you through these things as well, right? And also that's where the beautiful healing plants come in as well. To be able to help us connect to our unconscious worlds, to the unseen world, and also release things in the body, in the mind, and the spirit. Our teacher plants are also great assistance. Again, with a experienced practitioner helping to guide you as well. Yeah, and I think what we're really getting to is that in wanting to be in a greater space of love, because as I said, let's not pretend we don't want to have those love feelings more, right? We can't bypass, we have to accept that there is the fear that's going to help propel us, that there is all of that needs to be worked through, and that we cannot skip the getting to know part, right? That we have to know all parts of ourselves. We have to just get to know all of it more and more, and to see the patterns, and to come into greater awareness, and to stop rejecting those parts of us that we judge as bad or wrong or not good enough, because that's the love is coming into the state of wholeness. And I mean, the shamanic understanding of this is stalking, that sense of stalking yourself. That's what they talk about.
It's funny because stalking sounds like such a harrowing word as well. Like,
like hunting, like because that's the thing. Like the Bushmen talk about. I mean, it's the art of hunting, of stalking, is to become in the consciousness of the animal that you are hunting, in becoming it, in breathing like it, in moving like it, in joining with its consciousness. You can understand it, and you can dance with it, and therefore know it, and therefore become one with it, to be able to then hunt. That is the way. I mean, it's beautiful, really. To really know inside out.
Yeah. And I mean, I was thinking about with regards to another, when we think about loving another, like, you know, it is in knowing them more that we can love them more. Like we can really see that, like, oh, now I know they're good and they're bad, like inverted commas, you know, oh, and that means that I can now love them more relaxed. And it's, you know, that we actually appreciate that when it comes to somebody else. With ourselves, you know, we reject the part, like, you know, that becomes our shadow because we can't see it, because we don't want to, we can't, whatever. We want to just look at the light, you know, and say, this is what I am. And, you know, when someone says, oh, you know, something nice, it's often easier to hear that than it is when someone says something that's not nice, because you're like, I don't connect with that. I don't attach myself. That's not me. You know, but actually, if you're really, really, you know, to really know and love the deeper depths of yourself, of course, you've got to be able to understand that, you know, you've got all of the colors, everything's within you. Do you know what I mean? So that it's like you can't not look over there and think that you're going to love yourself greater over here, because that will just come and slap you in the face like constantly until you are willing to accept that part of yourself, because it's always just you and you in every experience that you're having, you know. And you might, of course, there's other people there, but actually it's really, you know, there's nothing. Yeah, the most important thing going on is what's going on within. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not how it looks, it's how it feels. So
all we can do is get to know is know ourselves greater, and as we know ourselves greater, we will come into greater cohesion and greater wholeness. We're always whole, but we don't perceive ourselves as whole, right? That's the thing in the dimensions, right? We are always that oneness, we are always whole, but we fall into the trap of separation. So in knowing ourselves more, in embracing all of ourselves, because we are the darkness and the light, we are it all. And it's funny, it's kind of like that, it's almost like that paradox, right? That it's like we have to, in accepting the fear and accepting the darkness as a part of it all, we will come into a greater oneness and connection and increase and raise our vibration consequently, right? It's kind of that, like, yeah, in accepting the fear and the darkness, we increase the light and we increase the love. Because as I said, as high as you go is as low as you go, and you cannot have one without the other. You have to have it all.
And when we
go on, sorry. No, go on.
I was going to say, and when we actually have the intention to observe ourselves with compassion, the way that we then see all of us is very different as well. Because, like, you know, going back just to that point of me on the mountain, and, you know, in that moment, I have the philosophy and the awareness that actually, you know, that I'm here to love myself whole. So in that moment, even though it felt so painful, I didn't reject myself. I embraced myself and took myself on that journey to greater love, to find, you know, greater relax and greater peace. And that's what we're all able to do once we're working with that idea of, oh, actually, this isn't something that, you know, I'm trying to get away from. It's not that I'm supposed to be somebody else, but here I am being this. It's like, no, this is me.
Yeah, and that just comes back to that idea, like, I don't know if I repeat myself, but just that love is actually just about relax. Like, I remember you like, talking to me about that a few years ago and just being like, yes, exactly. It's so funny, but that's exactly it. Like, we're just looking for greater relax, greater acceptance. Love is relaxed. Love is breathing deeply, being in movement, being in, you know, like, and how do you feel more relaxed and more accepting? Not more numbed, not more avoiding, you know? And that's, you know, where the idea of relaxed can get a bit tricksy, right? But really relaxed in your body, really open, really accepting, you know. And fear is that stress, that holding, that stagnation, that refusal to, you know, that refusal to shift. That stiffness, that tightness, right? Like I'm gripping my wrists now as I say that, you know, like holding my fists, you know. It's like that, you can do it in the body, you can even feel it, you know. And that's why, and once we just relax and breathe, that is love. That is love. And I think that it just comes down to that simple question of what allows you to relax, what allows you to surrender, what helps to raise your vibration, you know, and to allow yourself to move towards that. and when we're really honest with ourselves, that's not numbing out, but that is, and sometimes, as we said, that's going to feel a bit uncomfortable at first, because you're going to have to really give yourself the space to sit with those emotions and those difficult things that are coming up. But the more we accept them and the more we allow them and the more we embrace them, then that can allow for a greater relax, because we don't have to put all our efforts towards hiding from it or avoiding it anymore, right?
Yeah, it's that idea that once you see something from all angles, then you can know it better, and then there's no fear to be had. It's like, obviously, if you're looking at something from one perspective, and then you can be scared of what else you can find, and if you never look, then you're just stuck in the fear of that being uncovered. So, of course, it makes sense that the more that we sit with ourselves, and the more that we discover ourselves, the more that we'll find that it's dark, but the more that we can bring that into the light is actually the thing. It's we have an idea of our love and light being something that we desire, but we don't desire it through spiritual bypassing either. Like, we don't want to just be in this idea, right? Because it's not real. We want to feel
there'll always
really
be the darkness.
relaxed.
So it's more the act of bringing things into the light than the kind of final destination, again, getting stuck in the future of everything being in light, because that's just not possible, because it never will be. It's more that the more we allow the dance, the more we allow the relax, the more we can see what we might have perceived as dark within light. And probably vice versa as well, right? And again, moving out of that stagnation, I'm drawing a kind of figure of 8 shape with my hand as I say that, this kind of like the infinity sign, I guess, of like it constantly flowing between and nothing being stuck in anything. And they're always being both. I mean, and that's what the mushrooms have taught me so many times, that you might try and put on the rainbow unicorn filters, but the truth of the matter is that we need it all, and we are it all, and we need the dark and we need the light in order to have this cosmic dance that is the beautiful world that we're living in as well,
Exactly. Like, so you
so the thing with these, I think we've done very well discussing this whole concept of love and fear. But what comes to me is, like, I know that when you first started talking to me about this kind of stuff, and I would often, and you're like, we all have the love within us. It's something we talked about earlier a little bit in the beginning of the show, and that I would often think like, oh, but she doesn't know that really there's only darkness inside of me, and that I think that when you're in a state of depression, or a lot of darkness, a lot of pain, a lot of contraction, a lot of fear in the body, and in your mind, and it's really difficult to find or to know that love within self, that it is within us.
Well, it makes sense that when we're living in our minds and we're like sort of stuck in that sort of fear state, which generally means that we're living in a past idea of ourselves, maybe wishing some things hadn't gone the way they had, or we're living in a future fear and anxiety. From there, then we feel disconnected, and that's what makes us feel so dark. But in the present moment, and we'd all have these moments where we would find that we've got moments of lightness. We may not be connecting so much with them, they may be overshadowed, right? But they're there, and we can find them, and and they can be like, we can just be, we could even be in watching something, right? Like being entertained by something. And in that moment, we can feel a lightness as we're watching it. Well, in that moment, that love is still within us, right? And moving on from that is like, there's an example like Bruce Lipton. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he talks about the chemistry of love. And so what he says is, which kind of shows this is true for all of us, is that when we fall in love, at that point in time, 95% of our subconscious programming disappears, and that we start to respond in present awareness. So in that moment, instead of seeing things as they are, we start seeing things as we are. So for instance, from being in love now, I'd say, imagine I'm walking down the road and I'm in love. I start to see all the goodness around me, and the experiences I start to have are brighter. And, you know, I notice the person smiling across the road, and, you know, and I'm helping this person over here. You know, in that moment, it exists then, and it happens within us. So it exists within us.
Yeah,
But
I guess it proves that if you can feel those feelings when you're in love, then they exist within you. So you can feel them anytime. Technically, you have the capacity.
Exactly.
You have that capacity within you. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, so it's because something has brought us into a state of love. Suddenly our whole world is being perceived differently. And I mean, literally it lasts about 3 months, right? Like often in this state. And then 3 months later, honeymoon period is done. And then people fall out of love and back into their old states of
default
being.
patterns.
So, right.
But it's showing that it's a pattern. It's not who you are.
Exactly. It's not who you are.
Fundamentally,
so,
like you have the capacity to have all of those feelings. Yeah.
So even now, I mean, it could be like that. You have a pet, right? You can have a pet, and you could feel that, you know, deep sense of love with your pet. Now you don't see that as you see that as the pet, but that's you. That's happening within you. That lightness is within you. So it's really coming back into yourself. At first understanding, like first you can understand that is in you. It's just that you haven't been connecting with it. You've just been caught up in your fear. And, you know, and that's okay, because, you know, with that new awareness now, and you can start to find those moments, like we said earlier on, those moments of peace where, you know, you're not in the doing, or there's maybe not feel peace, but there's moments of space where you're not in the doing, and then you can come into yourself in those moments and actually start to bring in your imagination. Even like that's like, you know, so for instance, you might be thinking, you know, that you're feeling heavy and there's nothing for you, whatever, right? You're going through life having these heavy awarenesses. But then now you find this space where you'd normally entertain yourself. Well, in that moment, if you just stop and you start to go into desire as opposed to rejection, and then you start to think to yourself, oh, okay, what would be me happy? Like, what would I look like when I'm happy? What would I be experiencing in what brings me joy? Or you start to go into the imagination of yourself. In those moments, you can start to feel expanded, start to know yourself outside of
that's all like
those patterns.
The Joe Dispenza work, isn't it? That's how he works, isn't it? Like that understanding of like
exactly
with the imagination of self. If you can imagine yourself a certain way, and it releases the same chemicals, doesn't it, as well? It's the whole thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's basically you're just interrupting your patterns and bringing in a greater awareness of self in that moment. And you're right. And because in that moment you're then imagining it, then you're feeling it. And so actually then you're having the chemical reaction of feeling that expansion or that love, or, you know, that connectedness, whatever it is that you're desiring. I mean, personally, I do have, you know, when I look at fear now as the opposite of desire. Because fear to me is saying, oh, here I'm scared of this, and here so if I was to turn that on the head, it'd be saying, well, that means I'm desiring this. So if I'm in fear of not having enough money, that shows me that I'm desiring having more money. Or, you know, fear of not having food, telling me I'm desiring to have food. So then it becomes, where do I put my concentration? Where am I wiring myself to? You know, and obviously once you have the space to do that, it becomes easier. And once you have the practice, it becomes easier, because then you start to see the results, because that's how we then start to create something else in our lives as well, just by having those small pockets of moments of connection with ourselves and our higher desires. And, you know, and then that starts to reflect back.
Is that something we're maybe going to get to in the exercise? Possibly. Great. That was awesome. That was a brilliant answer. Thank you. the other thing that came up for me thinking about it, like trying to put myself into the position of someone, or just remembering also how I first responded to this information when I first kind of like started to grapple with some of these ideas, is, how does one get out of, a lot of people be like, oh, but my fear isn't perceived. It's not about my trauma patterns. My fear is real. My fear is like, how am I going to get enough money to pay my rent this month? How am I going to get, enough money to get food? How am I going to get food this month for my family? And so, that people might feel like, these are real fears. I can't just, choose to wire myself towards love, or, what would you say to that challenge?
And I mean, obviously it makes sense that in that moment, when you're in a fear state, it's not the moment to jump into love, right? We've got to come into balance. So we've got to find a moment of neutrality in order to be able to create a different idea as well. So it's in that moment where you're thinking that's what you're thinking, fair enough. But once you're having an understanding that there's something else that can come in that moment, and that can create a different outcome. So it's like we're coming back to the idea like that obviously we are energy out here, and that we're vibration, and that we are influencing our environment. So by finding a way to raise our vibration, we can start to change what it is that we attract. So if we so
it's like
for
the
instance,
last episode, right? That's basically what we're talking about there in terms of like creating, and also forgiving ourselves, as we were saying, because it is all held in the body, and it's not like, oh, just switch it up, but it's just to understand that we do have that capacity to shift our realities, right, through the power of our mind, of our greater mind. Yeah, go on. Sorry, what were you going to say? You were going to say something else.
I was saying we'll be surprised by how quickly that can happen as well once we start using these practices, because that's the thing, it's not going to happen just because we know it. Like we can't say like, oh, okay, well, just have another thought and then something else will happen and then you'll start to feel in love. Actually, it has to be
feeling.
There has to be some sort of physical experience.
That's why it's also important to go into the somatics, into the feeling, into the body, right? Like you can't just, that's why we were saying you can't just think yourself happy. You can't just think yourself into love. You can't just be like, oh, but love exists, so I can just have it, right? So you've got to really do those meditations and those practices, first of all, to release the fear feelings within the body, and then also to sit in the feelings of love as well, to rewire ourselves to really experience those love feelings, right? And like you say, find whatever it is, like be it in the imagination of having that which you desire, or in the imagination of or in the association of the feeling of a love of a pet, or the relax of having of being held. Like, so you might not be held financially, but you might be held romantically, or you might be held by your parent, or you might be just held by Mother Earth, by Mother Nature, to go and to sit in a tree and feel that feeling of being held, and to sit with that feeling in the body, which we're not saying is easy to do as well, if you're wondering where your next loaf of bread's coming from, obviously, right?
No, yeah, but that's the thing. The thing is you got to start to become used to different feelings in order for you to be able to create new outcomes as well. And it's funny because there was a story that I did want to share about my nephew. He was literally in a situation where he was having a physical fear reaction, right? So he does boxing, and so every time his trainer would like go to throw a punch, he'd flinch. And so he wanted to overcome this. He wanted to find a greater relax. Now that's obviously very like primal. That's a reaction, right? Exactly. That's just there, right? You'd be like, oh, okay, well, that's just natural. Well, he was given the advice to go into meditation in that moment, to sit down for 15 minutes and to hold himself upright with mudra. Do you know what I mean? Like, to actually like focus his mind, and then to imagine himself in that same situation. But now when the trainer was throwing the punch, for him not to flinch, him not to move, for him to move out of the way really easily and really relaxed, and to feel that he was in control in this in this session, right? To feel like, oh, actually, no, he can that he's fully aware. And so he played it out. He then goes back into the training session and is able to remain completely relaxed without flinching. I mean, literally instantly after doing this 15-minute meditation,
amazing.
there was a complete, it was so amazing. And because he was able to give himself complete to the practice, and obviously he believed it as well. Like there was no resistance for him. And then it was reflected back to him, and he was saying to me, like, Auntie, I just couldn't believe it. I was so still, like, obviously there was still that, certain amount of like, wow, that comes from that. But that's what it is we've also got to understand that, actually our reality can change. If we're stuck on the idea that matter is more than spirit, and that, that what we see is
fixed,
is more important. Yeah. Right. That what we see is more important than what we believe, then of course we get stuck because we're not really able to then move out of our vibration. We're not able to move into acceptance and change, and grow in that moment. So of course there's a practice there of surrender. Like, we have to surrender to the ability, to a higher ability, and to be able to understand that actually this is actually, that being in that fear, in that contracted state, is us being in our heads, right? In our heads or in our gut. It's
in
not
our thoughts,
really
in our future.
It's not a full. Yeah. It's not a real heartful experience. It's not using all of us in that moment. And that's what we're saying, is when you're using all. Right, exactly. And when we're in that state of wholeness, and we're coming from, from the heart and from that higher awareness, then from there, what we attract is different, and the way we experience life is different as well. So, it is a practice.
And I think it's really important.
Unfortunately, we were interrupted by load shedding. However, we're going to be bringing this episode to a close now anyway. Thank you so much for being with us today. I know it was quite a long episode, but hopefully you enjoyed it as much as we did. We're now moving on to the exercise with Tara, followed by a meditation with myself. It's been so great having you with us here. Sending you loads of love. Bye.
Okay, beautiful people. So here we are in the exercise part of our podcast. Now, we're going to stretch you a little bit in terms of our exercise levels in this episode. And you may feel a little bit silly doing this exercise. It may ask you to reach a little bit deeper into your imagination and into your ability to let go of feeling silly. My background is in theatre and performance, and therefore this might feel a little bit like a crazy theatre exercise, but I assure you that it's really worthwhile. And as you know, we talk about a lot, and hence the title of the podcast, Embodying Spirit, the embodiment of these feelings, and bringing these feelings and emotions into the body can really help us to process them. So this is a bit of a polarity exercise to help us find a way to also realize that love and fear are part of the same spectrum, that they're not, that it's a false opposite, that they're all part of the love spectrum, and that they are intimately connected. And when we bring our awareness to where they sit in the body and how they feel in the body, and we start to be able to embody the both of them and move between the both of them, then we can also have a greater awareness of them and a greater ability to shift in and out of them. So you may want to really give yourself the space for this exercise to, get into comfy clothes, take your shoes off, be in the living room, make sure no one's going to disturb you, give yourself a bit of space. You can also do it in a slightly less kind of full-on way, a little bit more internally. But I really encourage you to take as much space and time as you can for this exercise. So you may want to stop the recording now and just find yourself in that comfy, safe space. When you're there, then we can begin. So, firstly, coming back to that heart breathing, coming back to that space of breathing into your heart and connecting to a memory or a feeling of love in your body. Hopefully you've just done the meditation led by Isabel, and you can just go back to that feeling, that heart breathing. And if not, just take a little moment to connect to the first memory that you can when we think about love, think about being in love or a feeling of love. Connecting to that memory and breathing into the heart of that memory. And really tuning in to the sensations in your body. How does that feeling of love manifest in your body? And you're just going to, maybe it's best to work with your eyes closed or with a soft focus, and just allow yourself to be inquisitive about what's coming up. How does the emotion of love feel in your body? And allowing the breath to find its own pattern, how does the emotion and the feeling of love make you breathe? Does it make your breath short or long? Does it make your breath deep or shallow? As you breathe more into the sensation of love in the body, whether that is really going into the feelings and whether you need to take a moment to go deeper into the memory of love. And maybe it's a few memories, maybe there's a few different things that come up, moments in your life when you felt love. Or maybe there's no specific memory, you just know how that feels in your body, what it feels like to be in love. Allowing yourself to really let the breath respond. How do you want to breathe in love? Do you want to breathe through your mouth or your nose? Where in your body does the love sit? We've directed you to your heart, but maybe there's another place in your body that is calling for focus when you tune in to the sensations of love. How does love feel in your fingers? How does love feel in your belly? How does love feel in your face? And just allow yourself to grow that feeling. As you bring attention to that feeling of love in your body, those sensations of love, just allow them to express themselves a little bit more fully. If you think about those sensations being at a level 5, just see if you can crank them up a little bit to a 6, 7, maybe 8. And breathing more into that sensation of love in the body. Are there any areas of your body that feel tense? Where might you hold the tension of love in your body? Does love grip your stomach? Does love make your heart feel tight or loose? How does love, or the feeling and sensations of love, affect the muscles of your arms and legs? Does it make you feel more relaxed or more tense? There's no right or wrong expression or answer here. And as we already discussed in this episode, there are many incarnations of love as well. So try not to let yourself question too much what this expression of love is, and try and listen to the first answers that come up in your body. Let your body lead in this exercise. And as you tune in to the greater awareness of the feeling of love in your body, just allow it to amplify a little bit further. If you're feeling butterflies in your stomach, just listen to them a little bit more and allow them to be in the full expression of that. If you're feeling a sort of fluttering out breath, just allow it to be there more fully. And how does this feeling of love in the body make you want to move? Does it make you want to lie on the floor? Does it make you want to bounce up and down a little bit? Does it make you want to sway your hips, maybe? Maybe it causes you to tap your feet. Again, release judgment or attempting to understand why this might be the case, and just allow your body to express itself physically in the emotion of love. Maybe it makes you want to dance in a particular way, sway, swing. Really give yourself the permission to move as much and as freely as possible in this expression of love, and feel free to experiment. Try something. Oh, does my love in here make me want to move like this? And maybe you try something and you're like, oh no, that doesn't make me feel the love that I'm growing, that I'm amplifying inside of me. No. Maybe try something else. Be an investigator. How does it make your face want to express? Does it make you want to smile? Does it make you want to flutter your eyes or squeeze up your cheeks or wiggle your nose? However your face can increase this expression of love, let it express. Thousands of muscles in the face. How can they add to your love expression? And you can keep going back to these different ways of physically expressing the feeling of love, the breath, the tension in the body, the way it wants to move, the way the face wants to be. And is there even a sound that wants to come out? If this feeling of love inside of you could make a noise, what would it be? Again, don't think about it too much. Try to stay clear of words, but just allow any kind of sound to come out. Maybe it's just a breath, a particular kind of sounded breath. Maybe it's who knows? Again, have a little play. See what feels right. And have a little laugh at yourself if you need to. It's okay to feel silly. Just keep coming back to that sensation of love. And if it all starts to feel too much and too big, then come back into the heart, come back to that memory, or come back to that sensation of love, and just allow it to move through the body and grow it a little bit more. Like you're fanning the embers of a fire, allowing it to amplify a little bit more, a little bit more. And once you feel like you have this kind of physical expression of the feeling of love, see how it can grow. See how it can move. Allow yourself to play within it. find its extremes. Maybe it's something that shifts, doesn't stay the same. And if you like, you might want to pause the recording at this point and continue to allow this expression to grow. If you still feel like you need some more time, just pause now and let it grow. Play with it some more. Come back to the breath. Where in the body you feel it. What sounds it wants to make. Enjoy finding this physical expression of love. And now, you're going to take a moment and you're going to stop. You're going to take a few deep breaths in and out, and you're going to shake out the body. You're going to release all of this sensation, all of these feelings of love. Remember them, but release them from you now. Take some deep inhalations. And release on a sigh. And again, shaking it out. Maybe jump up and down a few times. Maybe give a... shake it out, like a shaking out the feelings, shaking out some laundry, getting rid of it all. Okay. And when you're ready, you're going to come back to a nice steady breath. And we're going to go through exactly the same process, only this time with fear. So to begin with, coming back to a memory or a sensation of fear, the first thing that comes to you. Again, hopefully you've done the meditation and you have something already, but if not, generally you think of something straight away and you dismiss it, so come back to that first thing. It doesn't have to be a memory, it doesn't have to be a real thing. It could be something you saw in a movie. It could just be that sensation of watching a scary movie. It could be something very real that you fear, phobia, something that's happened or something you don't want to happen. And allow yourself to really feel into that, breathing into the heart space and allowing yourself to tune into where the breath is held. Allowing yourself to tune into the sensations in the body of fear. Where in your body does the fear sit? In your gut, in your diaphragm, in your lungs, in your head, in the muscles of your body. Breathe into that part of your body and allow yourself to amplify those sensations. As you're amplifying these sensations of fear, try to now step away from a memory or from a actual experience and try to focus only on the sensations. There's a safer way to work with this rather than going into a trauma memory. And also just remember to look after yourself. If you feel like the feelings or the sensations are too much, if it's overwhelming, then please stop the exercise. Look after yourselves. But if you can, allow yourself to detach from any actual scenario and just feel into where fear resides in your body and breathe into that. Allow that sensation to grow a little bit more. How does this sensation of fear in the body make you want to breathe? Does it give you a constricted breath, a short breath, a tight breath, a held breath? Maybe an irregular breath, a fast breath. Is there a particular part of the body that it wants you to focus on? And can you grow this a little bit whilst, of course, looking after yourself? How does the feeling of fear make you want to move? Does it make you want to stay still and tense? To put your back up against a wall? To pace? To curl up in a ball, maybe? Whatever comes to you immediately as a physical manifestation of this emotion in your body, allow it to be fully expressed here and now in the room. Again, you can explore what works for you and what doesn't. There's no right or wrong. Try to let the body lead. And allow yourself to work with sound. Allow the breath pattern that you've developed or you're working with to extend itself out into a noise or sound. Maybe it's an erratic sound that only happens once. Maybe it's a continual sound. Maybe it shifts. How does your face want to express this fear? How does your jaw, your eyes, your mouth shift in response to these feelings and sensations of fear in the body? Allow yourself to amplify this a little bit more, just to where you feel you can. It may feel cathartic and helpful to allow this expression to grow to a much larger expression. Give yourself permission to take it to as full as feels safe and good for you. In the expression of these things is often how we can exercise them from the body. If you need to pause the recording once again to really continue the investigation of this and to keep finding it, then please do feel free to do that. And now, once again, you can shake this expression from your body. Take some nice deep breaths. Let it out on a sigh. Give yourself a good shake. Good shake. Shake out the arms and the legs. Shake out the hips. Shake it off and let it go. Wonderful. And so now you've explored, hopefully, a really full and physical expression of love and of fear. Two ends of the same spectrum, of this pole. And now we're going to, for the third part of this exercise, have a go at dancing the polarity of these two. So I'm going to ask you to take a moment to remember with your body this expression of love. What was the breathing pattern? Where was the tension in the body? What was the movement you found most expressed it? What was the sound? And allow yourself to go back into this expression of love, breathing into the heart, and see if you can find it quite quickly in its physical expression. Allow it to come into its full expression. And see if you can amplify it to as high as you feel comfortable. And we're going to stay there for a count of 10. 9. 8. Keep amplifying. 7. 6. Enjoy the full feeling of love. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. And shaking it out. And without giving yourself too much time, see if you can find that expression of fear once more. What was the breath? What was the tension? What was the movement, the sound, the facial expression? Moving in your body with that sense of fear. Allowing yourself to breathe into the heart, finding the fear in its physical manifestation, steering away from memory if you can and into its physicalization. And you're going to amplify it as much as feels safe for the count of 10. 9. 8. Deeply connecting to the breath. 7. Letting the sound out. 6. 5. Really purge it. 4, 3, 2, 1. Now shaking it out and going back to love. Go back into that expression of love, and we're going to go there for 6, 5. Fully in that love expression with body, breath, tension. 4. Movement and sound, your face. 3, 2, 1. And seeing if you can transition straight into that expression of fear. Find the different breath, the different movement, the different sound and face for a full 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now going straight back into the love, you'll find a key. What's the most prevalent expression of that? Is it the voice? Is it the breath? Is it a particular movement that allows you to tap straight into that feeling of love in the body? A breath into the heart, into the place where you most feel the love held, moving from that point now for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Transitioning into fear. What's the hook into your fear emotion? Is it a facial expression? Is it a way of moving or sounding? Really going for it as fully as you possibly can for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And again, as smoothly as possible, transitioning back into love, into the full heartful expression of love in the body for 4, 3, 2, 1. And back into fear. And you get the idea now as we go from one to the other. Can you allow them to begin to merge? What's happening at the edges between these two as you bring them together? How is the transition between the two happening? Now towards fear for 4, 3, 2, 1. Back into love. Where is it sitting? How does it express the love for a full 3, 2, 1. Beautiful. Allowing that to transition into your expression of fear for 3, 2, 1. Back into that expression of love. Where do you feel it? How does it express for 2, 1. Back to fear. How is it going to shift from one to the other? Allow that transition to come into focus for yourself as you go into fear for 2, 1. Allowing yourself to go back into love. And now allowing this transition between love and fear to continue organically as it wants to, going from one to the other, going from the feeling and expression of love into that of fear, from one to the other. How does it move? How does it change? How does it merge? How do the two find each other in a dance? How do they dance from separation into unity? How do they find their equilibrium? Keep it moving. Try not to think about it. Allow the expression to come into its own way of being. Allow the movement in your body to find maybe something completely different from either of these poles. How does the body now choose to find a equilibrium, a solution, a way of bringing these two different feelings into one body. Let yourself express freely. Allow whatever wants to come out to come out. Allow yourself to be surprised with the dance that is happening, with the movement that is happening, with everything that the body wants to express. If the emotions flow, allow them to flow. There's no right or wrong. Whatever is being brought up right now is coming up for healing. Allow yourself to be in a full physical expression. You don't need to put a label on any of the emotions or feelings that are coming up for you right now. You may want to pause the recording again at this point and allow this dance of polarity to continue. Allow the full expression of either side, both sides, all of them dancing as one to continue until it finds a natural point of conclusion, of stillness, of stasis. And finally, find a way to bring this dance to an end. This expression of self to an end, to a close, to some kind of conclusion. Come to stillness. And once again, give your body a good shake out. Take some deep sighs, breaths and sighs. Shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it. And I recommend now that you again pause the recording and take a moment to either sit in meditation. Well, probably first to sit in meditation to tune in to all the feelings that are coming up. And then, or if you can't sit and you just want to immediately journal, then to give yourself a moment to journal, to free write, to allow whatever is coming up to flow out of you. If you're doing this exercise with a partner, maybe you can just speak it. You don't have to write it. And allow yourself to be surprised by your discovery. The discovery of how you express love in the body, how you express fear, how you feel it, and what happens when you bring them together. When you bring their sensations into a dance with each other. What did you discover? What did you feel? What was difficult? What was easy? Where did your head get in the way? Where did your body take over? Were you able to fully express? What resistances did you have to the exercise? And if you really found this a difficult exercise to do, then it's probably something you need to do more of. So I encourage you to come back to this exercise maybe. Maybe you cheated a little bit and just listened and didn't actually do it. So I encourage you to have a go. Because what you're thinking about will definitely not be what actually comes up when you physically embody it. Yeah. So I'm not going to tell you what I think could or should happen because there isn't really an answer to that. But it's always a deeply healing experience to do these embodiment exercises. And we'd love to hear some of your experiences if you're happy to share them in the comments or personally message us. We'd love to hear. And make sure you drink lots of water. Make sure you're kind to yourself, as always. Give yourself a big hug. Thank yourself for doing the work. I want to lie in Shavasana for a while as well. Give yourself space to integrate. Sending you lots and lots of love. And we look forward to connecting with you again soon. Blessings.
Hi, gorgeous ones. Today's meditation is all about dissolving fear into love. So today, we're going to gather up our fears and then we'll work on dissolving one fear into love. Now remember, this is all for you, so go at your own pace. If it feels uncomfortable, stop. Just go with the flow and just look to always be kind to yourself. Here is a safe place. There's no need to be concerned. Here you are held. Okay, so let's start by making sure that we're comfortable, that we're comfortably clothed and in a place where we know that we'll be able to meditate without being disturbed. Okay, ideally you want to be in a dark room, and we're going to start by sitting down. You can either sit on a chair or sit cross-legged, whatever is more comfortable for you. Okay, let's bring our attention to our breath. In and out, we breathe, elongating our breath. With every breath, breathing a little bit deeper. Okay, breathe in deeper and longer. The aim is to become as relaxed as possible. And with every breath, we feel the tension in our body dissolve. Okay, before we go into the meditation, I just want you to ensure that your body is free from tension. So just scan your body, starting with your feet, scanning all the way up through your legs, just releasing and relaxing every part of your body, relaxing your legs, your thighs, your pelvis, your belly, relaxing your chest, your throat, your shoulders, your back, your head. Breathe in deeply and relax. Well, now I'm going to close our eyes, if you haven't already, and bring your attention to your heart. And at this center, you're going to see a golden white ball of light. And this golden ball of white light is going to grow out of your center, and it's going to keep on growing until it encases you. And now you're just floating in this ball of golden white light, feeling held and relaxed. It feels so divine to be held in this ball of love. And now that you're feeling secure and safe, you're going to bring your attention to your feet. And here at our feet, we're going to start to gather all the fear consciousness in our body. And we're going to move those fears from our feet up through the body, gathering all the fear. So let's move that up through our legs, through our thighs, through our base chakra, through our sacral chakra, up through our belly, through our solar plexus, back to the heart, gathering any fears and moving it further up through our chest, through our neck, through our throat, through our head, through the pineal gland, up, until it comes pops out of the crown and into the bubble of love. Oh, it feels so gorgeous here. And this fear, picking just one fear to pop into this bubble, and we can see it as a word. So remember to be kind to yourself. And as this word, this fear pops into this bubble, it starts to be dissolved by all of this love. Nothing but love exists in this bubble. And your fear starts to fall away from your consciousness. And as the fear dissolves into love, you feel yourself become a little bit lighter and a little bit brighter. How your heart shines so bright. And it feels so good to be held here in this loving space. And from here, we're going to go back into the body and we're going to repeat this exercise. We're going to go back to the feet. Once again, we're going to gather all the fear consciousness in the body and we're going to move that up through the body, through the legs, through the base chakra, through the hips, through the sacral chakra, up through the belly, through the solar plexus, through the heart, up through the throat, through the neck, through the third eye, up through the head, and out. It pops out of the chakra, crown chakra, into the bubble of light. And once again, that fear is seen as a word, and that word dissolves into all of this gorgeous loving light. You feel so held, and as it dissolves, you feel it leave your body, leave your consciousness, and be replaced with loving light. It feels so good to be held. You feel so relaxed. The love captivates all of you, and you know that you are safe and free. You may even see colours appearing as more and more love consciousness becomes into your awareness, and you may feel yourself becoming lighter as you let go of all that you have been carrying. Now we're going to repeat this once more. We're going to go back to the feet and we're going to gather any fear consciousness once again, and we're going to move that up through the body. Going to keep on moving that up through the legs, through the base chakra, through the pelvis, through the sacral, through the belly, through the solar plexus, through the heart. Remember to keep your breath nice and relaxed. Continue to move fear up through your throat chakra, through your head, through your pineal gland, and pop out of your crown chakra into the bubble of light where nothing but love exists. And every remnants of this fear leaves and is replaced by this golden, gorgeous light that holds you so dearly and feels just like home. And then you're going to come back from here. You're going to come back into your heart, and you're going to glow a little bit brighter from your heart. And you're going to send out more love energy And as you send out this love energy with every breath, you're going to feel this bubble of love, gorgeous radiating light grow wider and wider until it encases the room or the area that you're in. And it's going to keep going until it fills up with the house, the space that you're in, and everybody in it is bathed in this love that shines from your heart, heals everything that it comes in contact with. And this love continues to glow brighter and wider. And as this love glows brighter and wider, it encases the whole of the city and everything and everyone, every animal and plant is encased in this bubble of love and is bathed in the love and light that's coming from you, from your love. And as your love connects with all, everything shines brighter. This love continues to shine and it becomes wider and wider until this love encases the whole of the country you're in, and everything and everybody. All is bathed in this golden love. Oh, how good it feels to be relaxed, to be home, to be at one with all that you are. And this love that is you, this love that is you, this love that is you, this love grows, this love that is you grows wider and wider, and it continues to spread out further until the whole of the continent is bathed in this love, everybody and everything. How good it feels to bask in this oneness. And this love continues to glow brighter and brighter. And now this love encases the whole of the planet. Everything is bathed in this love. And it continues to grow wider and wider. And now this love goes so far that it touches the whole universe. All the planets. Everything is bathed in this white light. And the love goes further, as far as you can imagine. This love is encasing everything. It feels divine to be home at one with all. We'll take a minute to really, really enjoy this loving awareness. So grateful to be a part of this divine source energy. So grateful to be home with yourself. To be at one with all. And now we're going to be drawing back through, bringing this love back through the universe, back through the earth, back through the continent, through the country, back through the area, back through the room, back home into your heart, where all of this love exists. Take a moment to thank yourself for connecting, for coming home, for being at one with yourself. Okay, now we're going to come back into our body consciousness. We're going to bring our awareness back into our bodies. We're going to bring our awareness back into our fingers. Let's start wriggling our fingers and wiggling our toes as we come back to ourselves. Now I invite you to bring your hands together and rub your hands to create a bit of warmth. Place your gorgeous hands over your gorgeous eyes. Rub your face. And when you're ready, flutter your eyelids open. Thank you. Thank you for coming on this journey of releasing your fear into love. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And thank you for trusting me here today. I love you all and wish you pure divine blessings on your journey. And remember, you can revisit this meditation. If you have any fears that come up and you want to dissolve them, just come back to this recording. And please, I invite you to share with us what you experienced. Love to you all, and thank you once again.
Thank you so much for listening to Embodying Spirit with Tara Love and Isabel Almeida. This podcast is brought to you by Rewire Desire and the Conscious Connection community. Please see the links to our social media and websites in the show notes to connect more and access our other offerings. This podcast is brought to you free of charge to spread the love and light we all so deeply need in these times of transition. If you feel abundant, safe, and in a space to be able to give from, we would deeply appreciate your support to sustain this gift. Please follow the link below to make a donation. If you would like to connect deeper and would consider becoming a more active partner, then please reach out to us. We look forward to you tuning in again with us soon. Love always, Tara and Isabel.